Hello everybody, so today we're going to create this in Unity. So this character is from a project of mine a long time ago. It's from 3ds Max into Unity, hence the fact that some of the meshes are not here. But anyways, the gist is we have all of these different buttons for the animations. We click on them, the character triggers the animation and then goes back to a default pose. So I have all these different ones here, like there's a run and it will activate for a little bit. If I pause, I play focused, you'll see there's the character running. If I click on my mesh and I press a button, you'll see there he went from his default, he does the angry animation, and then he'll eventually go back to the default animation. If I do, let's do a quick one, so I'll say shoot. So there he goes from default to shoot, does the whole animation. And as soon as he's done, he's back to default. And this works with all the animations. So, if you want to see the animations fully, I've got a YouTube video over here, Animation Exam, which runs through all of them from a front and side view as well. There's a total of 9 animations, I believe, including the default. And the stats for the animations are here. And this will become important just now. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a new Unity project. It has to be 3D. You will also need to get access to the character model, which I have called /strike.fbx. So a 3D project, I'm just going to call it animation example. And I'm going to make the organization myself and create this. So you can use a URP, you can use whatever type of 3D thing you want, as long as it's 3D, that's all you need, alongside the model. I've already put all of the animations onto the model. You can see over here, I have a total of 1,400 keyframes in 3ds Max. Nowadays we use Blender instead, but that's basically what the character looks like. And all of these animations are shared on this timeline. So the premise is we take the character, we put him in Unity, we chop up his animations into all of these little ones here, and then we animate him with a little bit of code as well. So I'm going to pause and I'll resume the moment my Unity project is done. And we are back. Here's the Unity 3D project. Alrighty. We're going to need a few folders, so I'm going to click down in my window over here. I'm going to create a folder called Animations. I'm also going to create a folder called Scripts. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this FBX and I'm going to click drag it down into the Unity project. There we go. The other way you could do that is by going Assets, import new asset, and then you look for it on your computer, but I'm going to stay with it this way. Okay, so we click on the character, we don't have to worry about the model tab, we don't have to worry about the rig tab, we don't have to worry about the materials tab. Trust me, I've tried, I cannot get those arms back, it's okay. The animation tab is what we are looking for, this thing over here. So that character has got all those different animations. If I open up this little preview window here and I hit play, you'll see it does the attack animation, then it does the death animation, then it will do the jump, the angry, the happy, the motivation, the run, the shooting. It'll go through every single animation in order. That's not what we want. We want each animation to be its own thing, not one single super long 1,400 keyframe animation. Here it is. So it starts at frame 0 and it ends at frame 1,400. We want multiple of these. So to cut this animation up, we call it clipping, much like you do with the Twitch stream. So here's the first one. I'm going to call this attack. There we go, and it changes the name of that from 0 to, I don't want it to be 1,400, I want it to be 140. So now it says start 0, end 140. And if I hit play, and I open up the preview window, you'll see it does the attack, and then it does the attack again, and it will keep doing the attack infinitely. That's what we want. So we want to do this for every single animation now. So how do we get another animation? Well, we hit the plus button here for the clip. Go over here. The next one would be death, and so on, so on. If you want the stats, there are all the stats for every single animation. Don't worry about the number at the end for now. That's for when we are doing our script and our coding. Just focus on the start and the end of every animation. You can choose whichever of these you want, but you have to have the default one at the bottom. You must have the default one. In fact, here we go. You have to have this default one, and then you can cherry pick whichever other animations you want. There. So for the people without sound watching the video, that will help them. Okay, so here's your timestamps. I'm going to run through a few of these, and I'm going to cut to having all of them. So if I go back here, I've got death. Death starts on frame 150, and it goes through until 290. So if I hit play here on the preview window, he dies, and then he dies again, and then he dies again. Basically, every time I hear that the release for Hollow Knight Silksong has been extended. Yep. So I'm going to cut to having all of these done, and let me just pause. Back into Unity. Here we go. There's all the start and all the end times for all the animations. There's one thing we have to change. Default is supposed to keep looping forever. The rest of the animations we want to only happen once. So we need to give default a loop time. So if I go to default here, there's loop time. If I just scroll down a little bit, tick that. The rest of them, leave loop time unticked. Only default has loop time. Okay, so that's all of our animations done. Now you can click anywhere down here, and it'll say there's unapplied settings. Just say save, and it's going to cut up that animation. So our animation is now cut up. If I open up the model, every triangle is an animation that we have cut up, and by clicking on it, you can see these don't have loop time, but the default does. Correct. So we need to take every single animation, so hold down Control and click on every single individual one. So there's happy, there's jump, there's motivation, there's run and shoot. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I believe it's 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, there we go. Once you have them all selected, either go Control D to duplicate them, or you can go Control C to copy them, and then you close, you click somewhere and you go Control V to paste them. So we've basically taken all our animations and we've made a duplicate of each of them. So here they are, and drag those into your animations folder. So we've got our animations sorted now. Excellent. We need an animation controller as well. So right click anywhere in here and say create animator controller. Call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it player animator. Excellent. Okay. So we're on the right track. Of course, the other thing we need to do is actually take our character and drag them into the scene. I'm also going to go to the character's position. I'm going to make it 0 on everything. Let's see what it looks like in the game view. Well, he looks backward, so if I swap his rotation on the Y to 180, now he's facing us. Brilliant. I'm also going to rename this from /strike to mesh, because it's the mesh for our character. And just a good practice to do for when you're animating is to have your mesh be a child of an empty game object. So I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to call this, let's just say player, and I'm going to make this 0, 0, 0. I'm going to take the mesh, drag it so that it's a child of this empty game object. So now whenever you want to put a script on this character, all the scripts will go on the parent here, and any animation stuff will go on the mesh. So that way it prevents your character from accidentally like moving slightly off of the screen, which is a glitch I have sometimes unless I take the mesh and child it to a parent game object. So there we go. Alright, so we're going to have to add an animator to our mesh, and we can go into the animations folder, and we have this controller called player animator. Drag it into the controller slot. There we go. Don't worry about the avatar, not necessary for now. He's still in hibernation waiting to beat the Fire Nation. Dropping bars. Okay, so we have our character here who's got his mesh, and we've dragged in his animator controller into an animator component on the child. You now need to open the animator window, and by default that might be up here. I like to click drag it by the name and lock it down here next to my project and console. If you can't see it, you'd have to go into window, animation, and animator might be the thing that you're looking for. So we've got this here. I'm just going to move the exit over there. So this is where our animations will go. We are aiming for something that looks like this at the end of the day. Of course we don't have that yet. We're going to have to work our way there. So to add animations to the animator controller, you're going to have to go into your animations folder. You're also going to have to click on your mesh over here, whatever's got an animator on it, and we'll have to click drag all the animations there. So I'm going to drag the default first, and then I'm going to click drag every other animation. So the angry, the attack, the death, the happy, the jump, the motivation, the run, and the shoot. All click dragged on. So now if I click on the mesh, I go to the animator. There's all of our animations. You have to make sure that your default one is the orange one. The orange one is the first animation that plays when the game starts. If it's not orange and it's gray, then all you have to do is right click on it and say set as the default layer state, and you'll see now that becomes the orange one. I can set any of these to be the default. I want my default or idle animation to be orange. So the rest of these I'm going to take, and I'm going to kind of position them around so that they're evenly spaced. I don't want them to overlap with each other and cause a mess. Something like that. Okay, so we have all of our animations in here. Looks like this guy's about to get mugged in an alleyway. So let's look at the attack animation first. If we want to go from there to there, what you would have to do is you would have to right click and create a transition. So there we go, we have our arrow. Now I click on the attack, right click, make transition, and go back to the default. If we did not have those in there and I were to play the game, and then pause, let me say play focused instead of maximized, and then if I click on my mesh, you can see the default's happening again and again and again and again. If I were to pause and I were to add a transition, it might go to the attack. There we go. But then of course it gets stuck on the attack. We want it to eventually go back. So that's basically what we're doing. We're telling Unity in its brain that it has to go from here to there. So make a transition like that, and then we will have to do the same for every other animation. And I'll see you guys the moment that's all done. Alrighty, so there we go. Everything has got its wires connecting itself. It's to and from, I guess, if you want to call it that. So the animation that it goes to, and the animation it comes back from. So these arrows, we are going to have to do a little bit of editing with them. They've currently got an exit time we need to uncheck that and swap the transition duration from 0.25 to 0.1. It's just my preference. And you'll have to do this for every single arrow. And I've tried multi-selecting them as well, and it doesn't let me multi-change them. So you will have to do this manually. I apologize in advance. If you can't see where those settings are, it's this tab here. You click on the arrow line, open up the settings, there's transition duration. So go around removing exit time and changing transition duration from 0.25 to 0.1. And I'll see you soon. Okay, so there we go. Every single arrow line now has no exit time and it has a transition duration of 0.1. So transition duration is how quickly it snaps back from this animation back to the default. And Unity does a little bit of clever AI work to sort of get it to swiftly go back so that it doesn't look too janky. Alrighty. We also need a parameter for every single animation. Over here, if I go back to the original, see how they've all got these parameters? We need parameters for all of these here. So, if you're on the Layers tab, swap over to Parameters, and it's this plus button. I'm going to use booleans for everything. And I'm going to call them exactly what my animation is called. So I've got angry, I've got attack, I've got death. The only one that does not need a boolean is default. But every other animation you use should really have its own boolean. So I've got motivation, I've got run, and I have shoot. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, because we have 8 normal animations and then 1 idle, which is our default. Alrighty, so we have all these bools. Next thing to do is every arrow moving away from default. So that's moving away, that's moving away, that's moving away, that's moving away. You will have to scroll down until you see the conditions. And you will have to click on the plus button under conditions. And you'll see it says when something is equal to something. So we want it to be the correct boolean. So this is default to death. So I want it to be when death is true. And on the way back, it'll have to be death is false. So attack over here, click plus. When it goes to attack, we want it to go to attack when attack is true. When it comes back from attack, we want it to come back from attack when attack is false. When it goes to angry, it goes to angry when angry is true. When it comes back from angry when angry is false. So you'll have to do a true to the gray and a false back to the orange for all of these. Alrighty, I'm back. So every single one of these, when it goes away from the orange, so it's orange to gray, the animation is true, and when it goes back, it's false for everything. Okay, that is everything we're going to do in our animator. The animator is done now, completely done. So make sure that you save. I'm going to drag this down. Next up, we need to create a script and we need to create a UI. So let's do the UI first. I'm just going to look at this from a, click again there, from a flat angle. And I'm going to right click, create a UI canvas. Yep, there it goes. Okay, so here's my UI. Very pog. The screen space and the constant pixel size. So when dealing with this, I believe it's best to have scale with screen size and then set the reference to something like 1920 by 1080. That's optional. And then the render mode you can keep as screen space overlay. If you wanted to stick to your camera, then you can do screen space camera, but I'm going to stick with overlay for the time being. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my camera here, which is a little bit low, and I'm going to move that up, maybe even forward a little bit. Alrighty, so back to the canvas, the UI. I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to create a UI button, and I've been working with Text Mesh Pro. So when you create a Text Mesh Pro button or a Text Mesh Pro anything for the first time, it will ask you to import Text Mesh Pro. Text Mesh Pro is this cool thing where basically it gives you super fancy text. It looks way better than Unity's default text. We only need the essentials. We do not need the examples and extras. So just import the essentials. We don't need the examples. Okay, so we have a button using Text Mesh Pro, and I can keep zooming out, or I can just double click on the canvas and that will make it full screen for me. So there's our button. We'll go to the game view, you can see it's there. I'm going to take this and let's actually go to this button here. I'll double click on it so that I zoom in. There's a little bit we can change. I'm going to change the scale to be a little bit bigger. That's very visual now. Okay, maybe a bit smaller than that. Not a size shame. And I'm going to go to the text on the button, change the text to my first animation, which is attack. You can also change the color of the button as well if you want, down here. Or at least I thought it was down there. Let me double check on that. My bad, the changing color for the button is on the button itself. You click on the button and it is here. We've got these different colors. So I'm going to change this to something like a green, maybe. So there we go, there's our button. I'm going to double click on the canvas to zoom out, and let's drag this button. Oh, we're dragging the canvas. I want to drag the button up there somewhere. So that's our attack. Excellent. I'm also going to rename it to BTN attack, which is short for button attack. And I'm going to duplicate, drag it down, right click, duplicate, drag it down. I'll take all of those, duplicate all of those, and I'm gradually going to go through them, change their color and their name. Hello everyone, we are back, and here we go. We've got every single button. I've tried dragging them around in the hierarchy so that I could keep them in order for you. But there's all of the different buttons. I've also changed the color just that visually it's a little bit different. And if I hit play on Unity, hopefully they fit on screen. Hey, they do. Nice. But of course, when we click on the buttons, they don't do anything yet. But we can change that. So let's start doing that. Alrighty, I've got all of these. We need ourselves a script. So I'm going to go into my scripts folder. I'm going to create, right click, create a script. I'm going to call it UI controller. And I'm going to double click on it to open it up. You might be using Visual Studio. You might be using JetBrains Rider. I'm using JetBrains Rider and C# right now with my Unity. Trust and open, there we go. Because I like the autocomplete that JetBrains Rider gives, and visually it looks a little bit better than Visual Studio. No fault to Visual Studio though. So here's our UI controller. We're going to have to do a little bit of coding over here. But first, before that, let's go to our canvas in Unity. Close this, and close this. I'm going to drag the UI controller onto the canvas. There we go. So we've got the script on our canvas now. Okay, so coding time. I'm going to remove everything here. we will need a public game object for every single button. So I have an attack. I take this. Ooh, don't know what it did there. Public game object btn attack. It's literally singing JetBrains Riders autocomplete some praises earlier, and it does this to me? For shame. Okay, here we go. So we need every single button. Alright, my computer is heavy breathing right now. It is pretty weak. Maybe this is karma for all the stuff that I've pirated. Borrowed. Legally, of course. But here we go. Public game object button attack, death, jump, angry, happy, motivation, run, and shoot. We will also need a reference to the animator. I'll just say animator. So now we will need a method for when the button is clicked. So we've got one for on button attack click. What we are going to do, we're going to get the animator on our character. We're going to set the boolean, which remember was the parameters that we had on the side over there, all of those parameters. In this version here, they are these: angry, attack, death, happy, jump, motivation, those. This is why we chose to have them as booleans, because how setBool works is you put the name of the boolean in first, and then you put the value you want it to go to. So when the user clicks on a certain button, we want the bool for that animation to become true. And that's how Unity will know that it has to play that animation. We're also going to use a coroutine, which I'll explain how that works now. And I'll put something like this here. Okay, so for the time being, let's just look at doing the coroutine this way. I'll build it up for everyone. So we have setting the animator's boolean to true, and then we start a coroutine. What coroutine? This coroutine. So public IEnumerator, not IEnumerable. It has to be IEnumerator. Now I'm calling it stop everything, like that. And then inside of here we will do a yield return new, wait 4 seconds. Sorry about that everyone, I just had to do some multitasking. Okay, so basically what we are dealing with here is something like this. And we want to take the animator, set the bool, whatever that bool is, back to being false. Okay, so how a coroutine works is the moment you say start coroutine, brackets the name of the coroutine, and inside of that coroutine you put something like the yield return new wait for seconds 5. This will pause Unity, kind of. It will pause your script and wait 5 seconds and then make this attack animation bool false. So basically what's going to happen is it sets the bool to true for attack, then it calls this, it waits 5 seconds, and then it sets the attack bool to being false again. Very cool. The only thing is we would have to create one of these for every single button. So let's just do the next button. So I'll say public void on btn death click, and I'll copy that, paste that here, and I'll say death, and then I'd have to go and create a new coroutine which is stop everything for death and change this to death, and so on, there's an easier way than that. What we can do is we can go into the attack or the death or whichever one you have, create a string called name, set it equal to whatever button this is that's being clicked. So I'll say attack there, and here I'll say string name is equal to death. Alright. Then this coroutine, instead of animator.setBool attack and then animator.setBool death, we can just say name. So it'll say set whatever the name is. So there it'll be death, there it'll be attack to false. That means we will also have to bring the name in the brackets because it's a parameter. We would have to do that. So now in the attack button it takes name, which is attack, puts it in there, and then in here it takes name, set bool name to false. Well, name is attack, so it becomes false. So we've basically created like a placeholder and we just slot in a different value for it. So name is death over there, calls the same thing with death, string name death, death to false. So we've created like a slot machine kind of thing. We just slot in a different value for that, and it just takes that, puts that in there. Very cool. The time, however, is also a thing we're going to have to take into account. That time is here. So that's what this value at the end is for everything. So attack is 5f, which tells it that it is in float seconds. So 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 5 seconds, 9 seconds, 9 seconds, 9 seconds, 5 seconds, and 6 seconds. So each animation has its own amount of seconds. So I'm going to do a comma here, and I'm going to say 5 for the attack, and death was 6. So I'm going to say over here, comma, 6f, which means I've changed the signature now of my coroutine / method. I've changed the signature. So I need to go down here and make sure that it also has a float seconds. Now it's got 1, 2 things in the brackets. And we've got 1, 2 things there, 1, 2 things there. Now it works, no error. And I can replace this wait for seconds 5 and wait for seconds 6 and wait for seconds 9. I can replace that with seconds. So we're basically using 2 slot machines now. So we chuck in the seconds there, and it knows that that's got to be 5. We chuck it in there, it knows that's got to be 6. So there we go. We have made this modular. We now have a modular coroutine. So this will work for any button, which is very cool. So let's do public void on button, and after death, I believe it was jump. Sounds like a regular show reference. Whoops. There. Take that, chuck that in here, and then instead of death, we would have jump. Make sure it's case sensitive. Has to be exactly the same name, lowercase, uppercase letters as your parameter in Unity. Has to be exactly the same. And jump was 5. So there we go, that's jump done. Now we'll run through every single button and I'll come back when they're all done. Alrighty, so there we go. We've got on button attack click, on button death click, on button jump click, on button angry click, on button happy click, on button motivation click, on button run click, on button shoot click, and our single coroutine. You could, if you wanted, say stop, it should be stop all coroutines actually, stop all coroutines. You can put that above your start coroutines as well if you really wanted to, just to make sure that they don't overlap each other, but I haven't had that problem yet, so I'm not going to add that right now. There are ways that you could optimize this code as well, like you could, I don't know, give all of the buttons a layer or a tag or something like that. and basically just take the tag of that button. That way you'd only have one on-click script. So there are ways you can optimize that, much like how we optimized this. So that's all of our script work done. Everything else that we do now will be cleaning up in Unity. So if I go to the canvas, you'll see our UI controller script that we dragged on has now got slots for the buttons. So let's put those in. So that will be button attack, this will be button death, button jump, button run, and button shoot. There we go. It also asks for an animator. So for the animator, I'm going to click drag the player's mesh, which is that child game object, and put that in there. Alright. So with all of that done, there's one more thing we need to do, and then we are completely finished. You'll notice if I click the buttons, nothing happens yet. So we need to go to each button one by one. So I'll go to the attack, scroll down into the button script, which is built in, and you'll see an on click. Click on the plus, and it says, what game object with a script do you want to put in here? I want to put the canvas with our UI controller in there. Now it says, what method do you want to use? So I'll click on this, go to the script, the UI controller, and I want button attack, because this is the attack button. I go to death, scroll down, click on the plus. I want my canvas in here. I want to go to the UI controller on the canvas and look for on death click. Go to jump, drag the canvas in there, look for the on jump click there, and I'm going to keep doing this for all of them. Been recording for what, 37 minutes? It's crazy. Okay, here we go. So all of these buttons have got their correct method being called. So if I go into Unity now, I recommend you test with every single button, because all it takes is one misspelled boolean somewhere in either your code or down here to cause a button to stop working. So I'll say attack, does the attack. I'll say death, does the dying, and then eventually he goes back. There we go. If I do jump, and it should also work if I am in a focused screen. I'll say angry. Yeah, he does that. And you'll see I can't actually click the other buttons until that is done. There we go. And if you click on your mesh as well for your character, you can actually see the animations going in real time. So there the motivation is working, and the moment motivation is done, it sets it to false. So it's back to default. I click run, run is true. It waits for 5 seconds for the run, sets it to false, go back to default. And that's basically how it works. So I click jump, it says jump true for 5 seconds, and then makes it false again. So it's back to default. That's the gist of creating an animated character using buttons, a little bit of scripting, and an animator controller. If you have any problems with this, the reason for that could be either your button does not have the on click, your name for your boolean might be wrong or misspelled, or in your script you might have a spelling mistake somewhere here, like you might say death instead of death, and that does actually break the program. So make sure that's all correct, and that should give you our final end product. You can change your camera angle, etc., etc. This one over here is another complete one that I've got. Exactly the same thing, just some of the names are different, and the camera angle is a little bit different. So there we go. Well done for making it to the end of this. And good luck for your own ones. Ooh.